Welcome to the Story Learning Podcast, regular doses of language learning tips and motivation to help you become fluent in any language. With me, Olly Richards. For language programs, books, free resources, and much more, visit StoryLearning.com. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. This is the I Will Teach You a Language podcast. If you're learning a foreign language, welcome. You're in the right place. Welcome home. This is where we talk about language learning and how to learn foreign languages quicker, better, and have more fun in the process. Now, at the time of recording, or rather when this episode comes out, we're going to be nearing the end of July, and in the end of August, so a few weeks away from when you're currently listening to this, we have a great event coming up in Montreal, Canada. It is the Montreal Language Festival, and I'm helping to organise it, along with Steve Kaufman, Tetsu and Joey, who are the main organisers, and I'd love to see you there. So if you are in Canada, especially Eastern Canada, or maybe you live in New York or Boston or somewhere like that, and you fancy coming along, please do. We have tickets available still, and it's at the end of August. You can go to langfest.org for more information, or you can just search for Montreal Language Festival. We have a stunning lineup of speakers. We really do. So I'll just leave it at that. You can go to the website for more information if you'd like. I also mentioned that because today's question comes from Montreal as well. So I want to make sure that Daco, if you're listening, I hope you're going to come to the to the event at the end of August. Now, without any further ado, let's hear today's question from Daco.
Hi, Olly. This is Daco, and I'm from Venezuela, but I live in Montreal, Canada. Thank you so much for your podcast. It's a great companion for anybody that's trying to learn any language. So my question is the following. I want to learn Chinese, but I know there are two different Chinese, I think, Cantonese and Mandarin. So I have no idea what's the difference between these two and where to start. So I heard you speak Cantonese, I think. So which one do you recommend me? Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Hi, Daco. Thank you very much for your question, and I like this because it gives me an excuse to talk about Cantonese, which is always welcome. Now, should you learn Cantonese or Mandarin? I think this question actually comes up surprisingly often, and I think it probably stems from people just not realizing what the distinction is and what the relevant information is. Now, I speak Cantonese. I don't speak Mandarin, but I know a fair bit about it because I have many colleagues who work with Mandarin and in Mandarin, and so I've heard. I think I consider myself fairly familiar with the kind of relevant facts. You know, you've got a lot of different Chinese dialects. It's not just Cantonese and Mandarin. There are many, many more. I can't really talk about them with authority here, other than that, you know, if you do a search on the internet for varieties of Chinese, you will find a lot. Now, some people consider Cantonese to be a dialect of Chinese. Others consider it to be a completely separate language. Doesn't really matter, but they're very, very closely related, although they're not mutually intelligible. Okay, if I speak Cantonese to someone from China or Taiwan, they won't understand. And likewise, if you go to Hong Kong and you speak Mandarin, some people might understand if they've studied or gone to school in Mandarin, but otherwise, a native Cantonese speaker will only understand a limited amount of Mandarin. So they are not mutually intelligible languages, although interestingly, the written language is pretty much the same. Okay, so anyway, we're not going to get into all that detail yet. So how can you choose to study Mandarin or Cantonese? How do you make the choice? Well, actually, it's really simple. You just need to know why you're learning it in the first place. Now, it's really like asking, should I learn English or French? I mean, the question itself is impossible to answer. You need to know why you're learning it. Is it because you want to travel to China? Is it because you want to speak with ethnic Chinese communities in your hometown? Is it because you want to learn a language that is internationally useful? And if so, for what? Is it for trade? Is it for online work? Like, what's your reason? And Daco, without knowing your reason, it's very difficult to respond to the question. Because, like, picking a language arbitrarily is something that I never recommend doing. Now, sometimes we recently had a question from Turkey, which was like, should I learn Japanese or Spanish? I was like, whoa, so, you know, what should I have for dinner, chicken or beef? You know, it's like, if you learn a language for a reason that is just like, I think it will be useful, you're really going to struggle over the long term, especially with a language like Chinese that's really, really hard. The way that you succeed at a language over the long term is by having a real reason to use it. So, Daco, you said you're from Venezuela, you live in Montreal. I guess one of the reasons that your English is so good is because you live there and you have to speak it there, right? You may also speak good French, perhaps. I don't know. Not everybody speaks French in Montreal. But, learning Chinese is a big undertaking and you need to have a reason why. So let me give you some of the reasons why you might choose one or the other. If you want to learn an international language that gives you access to Asia and just allows you in general to spread your wings and communicate with more people around the world, then you need to learn Mandarin. There are, in the world, a total of 873 million native speakers of Mandarin Chinese. 873 million compared to around 59 million native speakers of Cantonese. All right, so there are 10 times as many native speakers of Mandarin. If you include second language speakers, well, it goes up even more. There's more than 1 billion native or second language speakers of Mandarin Chinese compared to Cantonese. So 20 times as many people speak Mandarin as Cantonese. Now, as you travel around the world and you go to Chinatowns in various cities around the world, you will find you will often find more Cantonese speakers than Mandarin. And the reason is that there was a lot of migration from the south of China, where they also speak Cantonese. In case you weren't aware, in the southern provinces of China, places like Guangdong, they also speak Cantonese. And there was a lot of migration from there around the world to places like the US and Canada and Europe. So that's why often when you go to Chinatown, in places like London, for example, you'll mostly hear Cantonese being spoken. I think it was the same. I seem to remember it was the same in Montreal when I was there last year. And obviously, if you go to Hong Kong in particular, but also Macau and also Singapore to a certain extent, you will hear Cantonese being spoken. All right, so it kind of depends. If you hang out in Chinatown, Daco, and you go to you've been on holiday to Hong Kong, then you're likely to think to yourself, okay, well, Cantonese might be more useful, right? So if that's the case, then you should learn Cantonese. But for any other reason, assuming that you don't have a particular reason or motive to learn the language, then it's almost certain that Mandarin is going to be more useful for you, simply because that's the main language of China. It's what you'll speak if you ever meet a regular Chinese person, and if you ever go to China. So yeah, without a deeper reason, it's impossible to say anymore, but those are the kind of things that you might like to think about. So I hope that's useful for you. And if you'd like to give us a little bit more information about your reasons for wanting to learn Chinese, then go ahead and leave us a comment on the show notes. iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 205. Maybe we can, a few of us can weigh in and give you some ideas there based on your specific situation. So I hope to see you in Montreal at the end of August, Daco. Thank you for your question. If you would like to leave a question, please go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/ask. Also, if you have been enjoying the podcast, I would love it if you could leave a star rating and a review on iTunes, because it really helps other people find the podcast as well. If you'd like to do that, simply open up iTunes and search for I Will Teach You a Language. Click on leave a review and you can do that there. All right, now at the end of every episode, I like to leave you with a resource of some kind on the topic of the show. And for this one, I would like you to go back to episode 42 of the podcast. Now, this may not be available in iTunes because they don't make the older episodes available, but you can listen to it on the blog. If you go to iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 42, then you can access it there. And that podcast is called What Language Should I Learn? And I think it's very relevant to you if you're kind of making a choice between a couple of languages, maybe weighing up the pros and cons. That will really help you make a decision. All right, so that's iwillteachyoualanguage.com/episode 42. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to today's episode, and in case you didn't already know, I teach languages in a rather unusual way through stories. Now, stories are a great way to learn a new language because when you're engrossed in a story, you remember things more easily, and the mechanics of the language just start clicking inside your brain. It's quite something, and if you'd like to find out how you can learn a new language or improve your skills in a language that you already know and do it with the power of stories, then you should check out my free Story Learning Kit, which will teach you exactly how this method works and how you can use it yourself to learn a new language. Visit storylearning.com/podkit. That's PODKIT to get free access. Inside, you'll find explanatory videos, masterclasses, worksheets, short stories to practice with, and much, much more. Once again, that is storylearning.com/podkit, PODKIT. And if you're lucky, you might also find a link in the podcast description or show notes of this episode.